the spiritual intelligence is in Indian religion is remarkable, I think. So
You is there any mentioning of reincarnation in Christianity? Do you believe in reincarnation? Do you think mass time travel is possible? Do you think that can we travel back in a time? Can we travel future in future time? If I want to know where was I
yes,
1,000 years back, who was I? Where was I? And I used to watch TV serials and even movies where snake is turning into human beings. If we play an instrument, or one human being is taking shape or a face of other human being. So is that shape shifting you are talking about in your videos, or this is different?
yes, the shape shifting I'm talking about is
It's free will. God has given us birth. Now it's our free will if we want to move up in the upper dimension or in the low frequency. And then what is the fourth dimension? Who is there on the fourth?
yes,
What kind of people or aliens or yeah.
okay, yeah,
But I'm not able to understand the logic why it is imbalanced for them. Because on Earth, 70% water. In our body, there is 70% of water. For aliens, it's not suitable. Hello to my soul family. Welcome back to your own channel again. Today, we have a special guest with us. His name is Mas, and he's here to talk all about spirituality and science. Few topics which were epic tales in our childhood for us. But those topics seems a real one nowadays because we are finding on internet all about the shape shifting timelines, aliens. So let's talk to Mas in regards to all those topics, and he's really expert. And let me introduce you to Mas. He used to be a high school teacher for many years, but now, from last 5 years, he is into energy field. He's a trainer and also a meditator, and he also helps other souls, other people to learn the meditation and practice spirituality. So let's welcome him. Hello, Mas. How are you doing today?
I'm very good. Hello, Amba, and thank you for having me.
It's
I'm
my
looking forward to our conversation here.
it's my pleasure to get you here. I'm always looking for knowledgeable people to come here and to share their knowledge, which they have gained after lots of experience and lots of hard work and years. Always good to share the knowledge, right?
It's
So thank
thank you too, because knowledge is kind of homeless if it doesn't find a place to connect. Um,
you.
and that is very much what this is in servitude to. Everything I do is kind of an attempt to bring this knowledge into a shape, and hopefully it can also reach and help others. And of course, I also find it quite enjoyable myself.
Yes, absolutely. So I will start this podcast in a different way today.
Yes,
I will ask you to sing a song in your language. What language do you speak?
I speak Danish. Dansk, as it's called. Dansk taler jeg. And I'll go ahead and give you a verse of one of my favorite and our very melancholic songs. It fits the season.
Yes, please.
Sig nærmer tiden, da jeg må væk. Jeg hører vinterens stemme. Ti også jeg er kun her på træk, og haver andet steds hjemme. Yes.
What does that mean? Can you tell us the meaning of this song?
Yes, it's a theme. So it's this of the draft birds, and I actually live down here in the marshes where loads of draft birds go south over the winter, and this is what it refers to. But then he's using it as an image also of him coming out of worldly pain and into the divine realms, which is of course a theme in Christianity. And my parents were ministers in the Danish Lutheran Church, so that's kind of the tradition which I was originally brought up in, and still has a lot of sentimental value. Though I've explored so many traditions and feel that all paths are, of course, ways to the realization that is one.
So this song is also related to spirituality.
It is, certainly it is, and it was also made by this very melancholic minister who kind of had his troubles and struggles in his lifetime. That's often the way it is, right? From those hardships, gold can also sometimes be be found. But say, I believe that you might also have promised to give us something of your mother tongue, which I'd love to hear.
I hope I hope people will not run after they listen to my song. जीत जाएंगे हम तू अगर संग है जिंदगी हर कदम एक नई जंग है. And that is like, you always should try in your life. Doesn't matter how much hard time is going on in your life, always trust yourself. Okay, some people, especially when I see some people, they commit to suicide after lots of troubles, family issues, financial challenges. But what I think about this life, if we are getting some challenges, challenges are here to make us more stronger inside, not to lose, to be a loser. No, no.
it's it's very beautiful, but I also, it has a very, Hindi has such a beautiful ring to it. You see, I've been changing up my space, so I'm not used to this camera angle, and I find like then the crucifix here is coming in the shot. And of course I was brought up by in the Lutheran tradition, and so in that way, like, he's the avatar that I'm used to connecting to the spiritual through, and it has a lot of value to me. But I've also been drawn to all these traditions, and of course wound up in very much interested in the Indian tradition, because there is like a certain spiritual intelligence in Indian religion, which seems to be more evolved there than in any other places. I feel, though, of course, you can find it in all religions. Then that sense of also the joy of spirituality and the intelligence, the spiritual intelligence, is India in Indian religion is remarkable, I think. Um, so, but I think that's what I've also finding in my work, which is interesting, is that I find there's this pattern connected to Indo-European culture, where all these different traditions, so often the people I've worked with, people from all over the planet, but I've worked with also people from Pakistan or Iran or from Sri Lanka. So both people of a Shiite background or a Theravada background. But what we all have in common in these Indo-European traditions is the joy of narrative and story. So we tend to approach religion through the idea of symbols and personalities and stories. And I think it's interesting, because then there's like Bollywood at one end and Hollywood at the other, right? Which really is an expression of that kind of thing of, we like to get things illustrated, and spirituality is for everybody. But there is some kind of old, very very old or ancient joy of the tale, and of incarnation and of the avatar, that I kind of find stretches itself from the Indian subcontinent and Sri Lanka, and probably somewhere on Tibetan plateau is where it ends, and shift over to something slightly different, and then all the way to Ireland, and in the Americas, of course, where it went. That's something that I find very fascinating.
Nice to see that you are interested like me. Like, I'm also interested getting to know other techniques, especially in terms of meditation, spirituality. In my childhood, I used to watch lots of TV serials where snakes are turning into human beings and human beings into snakes, or one human being is taking shape and face of other human being. So now on internet, I'm seeing this term a lot, shape shifting. And in one of your video, I have watched it. You are
Yes.
talking about an ancient shape shifting. I want to
Yes.
know more about that.
Okay, I'm very happy you
Mm,
touch on this topic, and like a lot of things around this practice, it's quite related to synchronicity, because I had someone write me and send me a video on this kind of the reptilian topic this morning, and it's very rare that people do that, and it's a very, because it's a very confusing phenomenon for myself. I don't quite know what to make of it, and that's why I'm so interested in it, because it seems that these beings, entities, they were simply some of the first beings that wanted to sort of come through me and be channeled when I discovered it, and I came upon it as a chance. I was aware of it as a phenomenon, channeling, but didn't really know anything about it. And then 5 years ago, after going through a lot of spiritual experiences and meditating, I encountered the material in video form, and then I also began being contacted by entities and developing sort of this ability to channel.
yeah,
And there, the
yeah,
reptilians came through as yes, the ancient shapeshifting reptilians, they call themselves, and they are primarily, their highest form is the form of the dragon, which is, as they explain, like the perfect cosmic form, and it seems that they are somehow connected to the deep imprint of the universe. So there's a lot of myths in all cultures which surround this idea of the primordial serpent, which the world rests on. So both in Egyptian mythology, but also in Norse mythology, and I was brought up with these myths. So the idea of the
mm,
Midgard serpent that encircles the world, and that's
mm,
somehow also related to the idea of the serpent people in Indian tradition, the Nagas, like these strange mysteries of what it is, the intertwining of the Kundalini, again, the serpentine energy, with our pattern and our human experience. And I don't know what that is, but it seems to be something that really wants to address itself and reveal sacred Gnostic knowledge. And that's of course also the serpent in the story of Adam and Eve. That idea that that is also carrying ancient Gnostic knowledge,
yeah,
and as you say, that idea of like how much is mythology and how
mm,
much is real is is quite strange for me too.
yeah.
Yes, uh, and yes, you promised that you'd keep me on track, because you, as people are might picking up, I'm quite talkative. So you you set the topics here, and I'm happy
Yeah.
to.
That's why I'm here for. Okay, so let's start with some topics here. First of all, Mass, I would like to know about soul contract.
Yes,
Okay, so I know we all have soul contract. When we get a job, let me keep it in this way. When we all have job, when we get a job, we always have a contract for that job. In that contract, there are roles and responsibilities, our salary, um, or other benefits. In the same way, the soul contract which we get when we take birth on this earth, on that soul contract, there is everything written. Who would be your mother, father, spouse, friend, your children, your colleagues? Every single thing is written in that soul contract. And then we sign the contract with our spiritual guides and with God or so called universe. We sign those terms and conditions. We say, oh, yes, we are okay. We would be having this tough life, this good life, this bad life. We are ready to take birth. But please give us birth on this earth. Okay. But when people come here on this earth, they are born on this earth, and sometimes they lose, they commit to suicide after lots of struggles and tough life. I want to ask you, Mass, why do they forget their soul contracts? because they themselves signed the soul contract, accepted the soul contract. Then why they ended they end up suiciding their life, finishing their life, and breaking the soul contracts? Yes.
it it's a very good question. And um and the best
Yeah.
answer I've been able to come up with, and what they seem to provide as an answer when you consult the other sides, and sort of the wise immaterial entities which guide these processes and which can see them because they don't forget as we do. Um, there is this. It has to do with free will, and it's the idea that we are both symmetrical, but we're also broken symmetry. And
Yeah.
so, if reality is to develop in a way that is interesting, surprising, has actual qualities that are not just determinate or clockwork, it needs to have this kind of chaotic factor, and the chaotic factor is free will, and that is introduced on our level of reality as humans, through this level of
Mm,
amnesia. And that's actually, like, it's a technical term in Platonic philosophy, this idea that we forget as souls in our lifetime. And
mm,
to my mind, it's also connected to a Sanskrit term which is called avidya, and which is actually, it means blindness, it means non-sighted, but it also means ignorance, and it also means sin, because it's the idea that um we somehow have the freedom to get lost in the world and abandon our soul contracts in order for reality to experiment. And I then have a like, let's say, like a deeper, almost mathematical explanation of this, but I'll also let let you get a breather and allow to ask questions, so I don't go off on a track here.
yeah, it's okay. So,
Okay.
let's say if I'm tired of my soul contract, let's say someone, I'll give you an example. Someone born on this earth, and then that soul never got parents' love. Okay, first biggest thing, because all the confidence we get it from our family, our mother, father. That soul never got parents' love, and then next part of the life is getting a spouse after parents. Okay, all the partners that this soul got, they were not good people. They were cheaters, drug addict, or criminals. Second part is destroyed. Now third part is children. Even the children for this soul are not good. They are, maybe they are not, they are selfish kind of people who just use, you know. All the parts of these souls are not good. And now this soul is really tired. This soul is saying, oh, there is no one on this earth to love me, not even my own children. What I'm doing on this earth, why I'm living on this earth? No, I will not live in on this earth. All the people on this earth are bad, selfish. I think this earth is not a place for me to live. And now that soul is tired. There are two things. First, soul will commit to that person will commit to suicide, or second, that person wants to end the soul contract or to change the soul contract. Can this person or soul change the soul contract with the God or universe, with the prayers? Can we say, oh, we are, please God or universe, we are done with our life, please change our life, please change our soul contract? That's most important thing here. Can we do that?
um Yes and no, because the great factor within this is knowledge or awakening or enlightenment or illumination, or it has different names, but this experience where we awaken to our true eternal nature. And at that point, the soul contract begins to, it actually becomes broken, so it doesn't, and then it's rewritten to some extent. And that's the thing that I can, for instance, do as an energy reader with predicting people's future. The more uh, aware they are, the more they're connected to their true nature, the harder it is for me to predict what's going to happen. Because what I'm reading is actually these karmic patterns that are just carrying them places. And that will always happen unless they become aware. So it's what you're describing as the soul being tired is actually the soul being caught up in the feeling that it's disconnected. And what it can do is then it can begin to decide to reconnect. So if you think of the soul contract as another ancient image, is the thread of fate. And if you think of that as a rope that's made up of many, many different strands, you are sort of always carried through on the rope, but you get to decide which strand you follow. And so you can be following those like that's really naughty and in the middle and away from the light, or you can move up to the upper side and have a really easy time of your soul contract. But your soul is always being carried to where it wants to go. And an aspect of that which can be a little terrifying is it's because your soul is eternal, so it doesn't really care that you're having a bad experience now, because it sees where you're going, right, and it has eternity to get there. So who cares if you're having a hard time, because you'll learn something from that, and then you'll get to use it at another point. And that can be where the soul can seem, almost cruel or merciless, like it's something bad that's happening to us, because the soul just sees it as it like playing around with itself, right?
Do you know your soul contract or do you know your soul purpose?
um, yes, to some extent, I do, and it's more of a deep intuition. But but what I am, when I'm not all my personal stuff, like all the karmic patterns and personality patterns, but beyond that, I'm an avatar of Mercury, or he's called Hermes, and he has different iterations. So he's also called Odin in my tradition, but it's also the principle of Shiva, and it's
Can,
also the principle of Michael,
can you
the
can you please
archangel. Yes.
can you please can you please say that name again? Ottoman? What
Yeah,
was that?
Odin. Yes. So Odin. So he's the king of the gods in Norse mythology, but he's the
Carrying a trident?
no, he has a single spear, and then the two ravens, which is thought
Oh,
and memory, which he sends out. So he's the traveling god, and that's the idea that what I'm doing is the energy is called Samana Vayu in this classic like yogic physiognomy, which is the energy that connects and balances the other energies. So it doesn't have any quality itself, but it's helping everything to be in its place. And that's like Mercury. It's going all over the sky, but it's helping somehow everything to be in place. And Mercury does that also chemically. It purges metals. So if you put it into something, it's like an impurity that purifies things by moving through them.
and what were you
That's what I
talking?
do.
Okay, what were you talking about, Lord Shiva?
Yes, because Lord Shiva is this principle in the Indian Trinity, and that in the Christian Trinity corresponds to the Son or incarnation or the destroyer. So there is, and he also corresponds to the number three because he's the fulfillment of the other two. So there's the first is the creator, that's Godfather or Brahma, and then there's the sustainer, which is Holy Spirit, or Prakriti, or emanation, and that's Vishnu. And then there's Shiva, which is the universe retracting into itself and then recreating itself, pure awareness. So that's what the universe is doing. It's moving into awareness to be seen, and then it sort of recreates itself in that moment. And we're doing that ourselves personally too, uh,
Oh,
in our lives.
you learned a lot about it. How come?
Uh, it's
Internet?
partial. Yes, and I've also been always been like a strange like a strange kid in that way. Always read a lot, spending a lot of time reading. So I've also been through a lot of the classic ancient traditions, like read the Bhagavad Gita extensively and the Upanishads and the Tao Te Ching, and of course I know a lot of Christian stuff also from my upbringing. So in that way, it's kind of religion has just turned out to be the thing I was apparently supposed to get into in this lifetime.
Great to hear that. You were talking about reincarnation.
Yes.
I am born as a Sikh, and I know in Sikhism and Hinduism, we accept reincarnation. We believe in reincarnation. Do you? Is there any mentioning of reincarnation in Christianity? Do you believe in reincarnation, or just
I
one? Yeah.
yes, I do believe in reincarnation. And it is kind of a model like generally, of course, Christianity doesn't, but then there are different kind of traditions and subsets which do. And then of course there's also um, in the Western tradition, there's often also the pagan tradition underlying it, which believed in reincarnation. So if you read Ovid's Metamorphosis, for instance, which is one of my favorite works, a very beautiful classical work, but he was a Pythagorean, and the Pythagoreans, for instance, believed in reincarnation. So it is a concept that's well known. It's called metempsychosis, or the transmigration of souls. This idea that we move, that the soul is traveling, and I do believe in that. That, and I also remember many past lifetimes, and can also remember other people's past lifetimes for them. So for that reason, for instance, yes. Sorry.
Have you seen your past lives?
Yes, many of them. Um,
You were a good person?
Both yes and no. So, for instance, at a fairly recent past life, I was not a very good person. Uh, I was, I have some memories where I was killed in about, I think, late, like winter 42, where I was just a German SS grunt on in the Einsatzgruppen who were committing atrocities in Lithuania and those places. But then I spent a lifetime as a also nursing after that. So I think like stuff in Armenia, for instance, where I then had a lifetime as a nurse. So often, like the soul will move through these extremities because essentially it's just one awareness having all experiences at
Yes,
once.
you are
Um,
right.
yes, and
Absolutely.
and that's the, so we have, the soul has to learn both from being uh, doing terrible stuff and also atoning for that stuff. Um, and and
Yes.
yes,
I am a past life regression therapist also. I do the past life.
yes,
Sometimes I get real time examples where a person was a criminal in his latest last life, and now that person is a very good person.
yes,
And then their question to me is, how is that possible? In my previous birth, I was a criminal, I was a child abuser, and in this birth, I love children. I do lots for children. How is that possible that in my previous birth I can be that much bad person? So, like you are saying, transformation is planned by divine. Divine wants us to play that role first and then to regret or to evolve within self, awaken, that is called. And then next birth that will take with the awakening soul, being good person, nice being. So you are right. I do believe in that.
I, it's a beautiful it's a beautiful example,
Yeah.
because I think it the soul is exploring contrast and the divine is exploring contrast, and when we get up into these, the more power we get, the more important it is also that we understand our own capacity for darkness, so we're able to steer away from it. And that is a dance, of course, because like human beings have grown way more powerful in the damage we can do, and that needs to come with these experiences also of humility and guidance.
Mm. Totally understand. Thank you so much for giving us your point of view. And I was watching your videos, Mass, that was in regards to shape shifting.
Yes.
In my childhood, I used to watch some TV serials At that point of time, there were not many TV channels, just one or two. And I used to watch TV serials and even movies where snake is turning into human beings. If we play an instrument, or one human being is taking shape or a face of other human being. So is that shape shifting you are talking about in your videos, or this
Y-
is different?
Yes, the shape shifting I'm talking about is, as they explain it to me, often taking place on sort of higher dimensional layers, and and that has to do with this uh, pattern of these shape-shifting reptilians somehow being a type of agency that's behind the material world and
Hmm.
can bend it in ways which affect our consciousness. Um,
Oh.
but then there is a deep ancient mystery that you're pointing to about the serpent people, and which turns up all over the planet. They speak of the echidnas in Greek mythology and the Nagas in Indian mythology, and this idea of the divine Gnostic serpent of knowledge, which somehow is alive within the human system and can be activated. So those are also the two snakes of the Caduceus and the cobras on Shiva. Those are the serpents of divine knowledge, and what do you make of that? Like, why are you so drawn to it? Can I ask you that, because it's a very fascinating topic. Um,
Sorry,
no,
can you please repeat that? Yeah.
yes, I'm just asking you, what do you find intriguing by it? Because it's much a mystery for me what it is about these serpent transformations.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yes,
No, because in my childhood we used to think that this is just entertainment. But
yes,
now, nowadays, in 20th century, 21st century, in 2024 year, I am seeing lots of videos on shape shifting. So that thing which we used to watch in the childhood many years back, 20 years back, now those things are here on internet. Those
yes,
concepts are evolving on internet. That's why I want to know those were not entertainment modes. Something is related to this shape shifting and shifting timelines. That's why I'm asking you. I'm interested to know, because in our childhood, which we used to storytelling by our grandparents, now those things are becoming real. Fairy tales, you know, fairy tales of our childhood are becoming kind of real nowadays. So uh, that's why I'm asking. I'm more interested to know that. What is your view? Do you, like you're talking about Nagas, shape shifting? Yeah, did you
yeah.
do any research? Yeah.
No, yes, I think it's a lot of it speaks to um, sort of secret ancient magic powers which are hidden in our genetic code itself, and can somehow be released and move into to higher conduits of energy patterns. And that's also what they're teaching or showing me, that the human body will go through these higher stages of transmutations as we develop our uh, dimensional capability. So we'll start living and experiencing ourselves in several dimensions, and that will happen up until the eighth dimension, at which point we turn ourselves into star energy and begin to exist collectively as a star. So that's to say that a lot of this seems to be these higher energy imprints, which are coming in from other parts, and that's other parts of the universe, or these deep akashic patterns we're connected to. So in my case, for instance, I have the experience of merging a lot with the energy of my main counterpart, which is an Arcturian named Umlan. But I think, as you pointed to with Elon Musk, for instance, I sense that that's the same with him, that he has this alien energy and has like these very otherworldly logics. And something
Mm-hmm.
I haven't channeled on myself, but it's also that we're discovering a lot within autism research, and I'm in the process of being diagnosed. It turns out that I'm sensory also, very autistic. And so it seems to be that there are these energy patterns with people who aren't really adapted to this world, but actually more adapted to another one, and which are trying to bridge those gaps. And that seems to be a lot of the weirdness which is coming through people. Uh,
Yeah. And also, you talked about Akashic and multiple dimensions. So, yes, I would also like to know what is Akashic? What do you think? What is Akashic? Yeah.
yes, it's what we also call the 5D. It's the dimension of space, and it's also the dimension of it's an extra dimension of time, and it's also referred to as ether sometimes in the Western tradition. So this is what I'm reading, and what we're figuring out
Hmm.
is that consciousness is not local. So
Hmm.
so the obvious example here is if you didn't know computers, and you sat down by a computer and it was connected to the internet, you'd think that the computer was making the internet experience. But if you understand computers, you know that all the stuff connected on the internet couldn't be on the computer locally. It needs to be in the cloud. And that's actually what we are. And you'll notice that the brains are also fatty membranes, and we're discovering these energy fields. I just read about this, that the brain generates, and these are in resonance with other major energy fields. So this is where we're taking in all the Akashic information, and this is why I can translate it as a channeler. It's because it's already there, and if I begin to resonate with it in my energy field, it it can be unwrapped and translated into my reality. I hope that makes sense.
Yes. So um, you are here on this earth, but w- what I understand from this terminology, Akashic records, is, for example, you in this birth, in this year, on this planet, you are playing a role. Okay?
Yes,
On this earth, you are playing a role. But what about your existence before this life or after this life? So that record is there, stored in that part of energy, which is so
yeah,
called Akashic. And
yes.
that is on the fifth dimension, which is higher than our 3D dimension. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Big topic, huh?
It's a giant topic, and if people are interested, that they can go to my channel Mondial Astral Oracles, where I have a lot of videos and explanations of these dimensional letters and the things that they and channelings, of course, because it's a scale of 12, which is then united in the zero of the 13. And so what we're discovering now, the fifth dimension, which we exist in now, but in the beginnings, is that we can open the Akashic fields, but time is also flowing in two directions. So people, you may notice, other people may notice that manifestation, for instance, the ability to for things to happen in your life when you put your intention to it, is way, way more potent than it was just 50 years ago, for instance. And that's because time flows in two directions now. So you're actually, things that you're experiencing now is also reshaping your past and changing your timelines. And that will be very confusing, but we'll get there as that's a part of this expanding of collective awareness.
So do you think, Mass, time travel is possible? Do you think that? Can we travel back in a time? Can we travel future in future time? What do you think?
Yes. So partially, some of these are potential timelines. And some of them are also, let's call them karmic timelines. So an idea you can, and you can, people can do this right now, is they can actually astral travel in their memories. So if they want to set something right in their energy field, they can go back to an experience in their life, and then rejoin themselves there, and begin to explain that situation to their own self in that memory. And that will begin to sort of alter all their frequency into a higher trajectory. So we can actually do that. But what people think of as heaven is that once you move into immaterial reality, eighth dimension and above, you can sort of look up all of experience at once, like an internet or a virtual reality. So,
Hmm.
in heaven, like that idea that you get to visit your loved ones, yes, you can relive and see everything you want at that point. So that's like time travel. Once you don't have a body, you're free to travel in time, right?
If I want to know where was I
Yes.
1,000 years back, who was I? Where was I?
If I close my eyes and tune into it, um, because you, of course, come from beyond the creation of this universe, and
OMG.
that, yes, and
Hmm.
you actually, because your shape is more like a type of energy configurations and then a geometric shape, and yours is very close to a set of the interlocking cubes that's surrounded by like a star radiation, and in
Hmm.
that it's mainly an energy of green, purple, and red, which is intertwining. But those are also the root, the heart, and the third eye. So that makes sense. But that's actually you. You're somehow more something like a sort of divine pattern, which is incarnating. That's your true nature.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
So thank you so much for sensing my energy. You also do the energy auras, right? Reading auras of people. You also do
Yeah.
that?
Yes.
You learned a lot in this. Yes, please.
Yes. It's because my technique is often that I just often I will get somebody to sort of take over and then see for me, and then I get the information. So that's a lot of the channeling I do.
Great. So did you learn all these techniques by meditating meditation and channeling? Because
Y-
I know when we meditate, we get directions. We get the directions where to go, what to do. It seems like someone is asking us to do that. Our inner voice, our higher self is asking us to go this way, do this, do that. Someone inside us is instructing us to do that. So, did you get the same type of directions internally, inner
I
voice?
I do, and I
Yeah.
think speaking of these higher realities that our soul contract and our conscientiousness, our sense of inner guidance, and our guardian angel, like all these things are actually the same thing, that intuition, which once we tune in meditation, begins to guide us back to the place it wants us to go. But it's just so difficult because often it's counterintuitive to what our intuitive human needs are. Um,
Hmm. Sounds good. I can also see your energy is really good, carrying good
thank
energy.
thank you.
Yeah.
Because I think people may be experiencing a lot around here on the planet, right? Its energies are upset, so it can also be a little hard these days to tune into these bright frequencies, and they can travel in time. So if you sort of also sometimes have apparitions of beings of light that come into your reality all of a sudden, it can actually be kind of future humans that are doing that thing. But time looks very differently because dimension 4, 5, and 6 are temporal dimensions. So time gets new layers there, until it kind of becomes a circle. Uh, and then it gets even, then there are like etheric layers and then astral layers. And that's sort of the angelic, the heavenly realms, and where the soul contracts are written, and
Where
universes are
does
created. Yes.
Yeah. Where does the angelic or heaven dimension starts from? Which dimension is that?
It begins in the 10th, so you can think, but the 12th is usually where it is. So 10th is like Holy Spirit, emanation, divine wisdom. 11 is
Absolute
ca-
reality.
yes. Oh, no, 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 no. Absolute reality is either 0 or 13. 11 is creative, chaotic. It's kind of soap bubble. It's where universes are created. It's kind of this strange superstring world, and it's also where incarnations are made. So the highest version of humanity, which is all human beings that ever will be and ever can be and ever has been, exist in the 11th dimension. And yes, and then in the 12th is, I
Hmm.
often jumble these around a little because it's so hard to grasp with logic. But the 12th um, is the smallest thing within the biggest thing. So it's kind of like these nanocomputers. I call them the quanta. Um, there are different terms for it, but like atomism, subatomic intelligence, which seems to be sort of the angelic aspect of everything, and that's where like all these angelic awarenesses also reside, and they are the first emanations of the one true source or sublime reality or the Brahman or Allah or the Godhead or what we call it, and that's 13 or zero.
Okay, so I'm just repeating again. First,
Yes,
second dimension, low frequencies dimension, not they are not in their consciousness. And third dimension is for us human beings. At least they can choose their life. They
yes,
can be in the high frequency. It's free will. God has given us birth. Now it's our free will if we want to move up in the upper dimension or in the low frequency. And then what is the fourth dimension? Who is there on the fourth?
yes.
What kind of people or aliens or yeah,
Okay,
four.
yes, it's a very good, and thank you for asking questions. So the first is actually more mineral life, and then the second is amoeba cells, like primitive life, perhaps advanced molecules. Third is animal life, and then fourth is the first time dimension. So that's forward flowing time. And that's the one we've been existing in. And that's also where self-awareness exists. So dolphins, elephants, there are other animals who also exist in the 4D. And we've just moved into the 5D, which is, to give an idea of it, kind of superhero humanity. You know, we're still physical, but we're breaking the bonds of what we can be and what the physical universe can be, and
Yeah, yeah.
and being like technological creators and remembering our true um, natures. And then six are kind of magical beings, time traveling beings, and seven are deities. That's a
Who is
beings that are, yes,
who is DAD? Who is
that
that?
yes, gods, gods and goddesses, and beings that they can also, yes,
Came to this earth, for example, Jesus, Allah, Lord Shiva, or Guru Nanak, all who came to this earth, all the prophets, right?
yes, exactly, all of them seven dimensional beings. um and that's also why when we see them, we can't really see much more than what we can grasp of them. But the more you rise, the more you can see of these wise beings, because the closer you get to being able to apprehend it. And then eighth dimension is star awareness or solar awareness. So so that's actually an awareness that's moved into so much concentration and harmony with the physical laws that it can give life to other realms for billions and billions and billions of years by giving off energy and light. Because of course, right now we're living off starlight, right? That's the sun in our sky. It's wonderful. Um, and then moving up the ninth, I think we're missing is all these alien collectives and stuff. Um, so yes, this is the human collective consciousness without a physical center. They exist as pure thought forms, as pure sort of knowledge banks that can exist and order and guide, and they love
Yes.
to do that. Um, and then in the 10th, they move up, and then it becomes galactic awareness, and that connects with the angelic pattern and everything. I think we climbed the ladder now. I hope it thanks to both you and for people for keeping up.
Yeah, you explained a lot about this because I was trying to do research on this, but I was not getting right person, and then universe sent me a right person to explain about this. How did you get all this information from? Do you have any website for this, or did you just channel it or mix?
No, this is intuitive information. Um, I think some of it I heard a little of from other channelers, but it's simply there, and that's also why I can, I can repeat it differently every time and explain it differently every time. But
Yeah.
it is something I somehow know in a very deep way. Yes.
Thank you so much for clearing this out.
Thank you too. And it's a very interesting to talk about these things. I appreciate to get the chance.
Yeah, especially these dimensions. I was doing research on that, but not able to do research. Okay, let's start. Okay,
Yes.
start again. Mm. Okay, one thing, Mas, you were talking about elephants, animals. They may also live in the higher dimension. How? Because their consciousness is not more than human beings. Then how can they be in the fifth dimension even? Yeah.
It, it's a very tricky question. And what it seems to be is that the universe is ordered in this magic way where uh, it's one whole thing, but it's experiencing self as a series of points of consciousness. So possibly, I assume the elephants are having an earth experience where where they are the centerpiece of the drama, and there might be like a part of their story where like these crazy bipedal ball monkeys show up and cause them a lot of trouble. But I assume the elephants are on their own path, and possibly there exists infinite other series of earths where other experiences and experiments are playing out, because it seems we were talking about the dimensions, that all these beings who come about, they exist in the 11th dimension. That's sort of Plato's idea of the world of ideas, that there's something sort of an infinite template of everything which is emanating into this reality as something.
Also, some places on this earth, overall on this earth, for example, Bermuda Triangle,
Yes.
someone goes there, will never come back. So, energy of that particular place or space is really getting us somewhere else out of this earth. Do you believe that on this earth there are some places where there is some kind of energy transformation or some changes occurring? For example, Area 51 in USA and so many other places which we even maybe don't know. Are not able to do research on. Do you think that?
it I I I think that and that has been a it's been a topic I've been very drawn to recently, the energy and magic of landscapes, because it seems that we are also, as a part of our soul contract, drawn to certain fractals and energies. And and to give an example, is I come from Jutland. It's called this peninsula, which is kind of made up by three seas pushing it up. And I'm very drawn to other islands. So I've been to Puerto Rico and Hawaii, for instance, other places that are also shaped by this configuration of the sea pressing up. Whereas other people might be very drawn to mountains, or plateaus or deserts, for instance. So people actually have these sort of energetic themes also in the landscapes that they live in. And some
Mm-hmm.
landscapes are better for portals than others. So
Mm-hmm.
deserts, for instance, are very good for alien visitations because they don't have a lot of water molecules in the air, and water molecules create this kind of vibrational grid also in our physical bodies, which keep us centered. So there are places, and of course, places like the Himalayas are known to have very spiritual energy, and that has to do with like these strong forces that are clashing together, and which the people who live there have in them somehow.
Are you saying aliens are not, water is not suitable for aliens? Are you saying that?
It,
Water.
it's a yes, it's a it
Why?
Yes,
Why?
they've told me this in channelings, and these are mainly the aliens that we know as the gray aliens, which are related much to Area 51 and the Roswell crash in 47. and which they say is an alternate timeline. And the thing is, we're discovering water has all these properties that we don't fully understand, and it has to do also with being able to conduct energy. And so we are made up of water at the same proportion as the planet, and that's a lot of what keeps the energy flows in proportion. And of course, you'll notice that if your energies are out of balance, then the immediate solution is to make sure that you have enough water in your system, right? Um,
So we should.
so that's yes, that's why, if you want to break reality like you do if you jump from one timeline to another, like the aliens actually do, then it's easier doing that in a place where the vibration isn't fixed through water molecules. I hope that made sense because it can get yes
Well,
pretty
I-
heady.
it's a new fact for me, but I'm not able to understand the logic why it is imbalanced for them. Because on Earth, 70% water. In our body, there is 70% of water. For aliens, it's not suitable. So
No,
that's what I'm trying to find the logic behind that.
yes,
I'm a lot.
it's because water makes up there's plenty of worlds and world systems where water is the main liquid, but there are also worlds where they have methane oceans, for instance. There are also realms where, even though they are carbon based, it's an entirely different type of organic chemistry, and for them water can be very hard to work with. And that's also why it's often easier to have these energetic exchanges rather than coming to planet Earth. But then with the gray aliens, that's because they come from this weird technological timeline where a lot of the Earth's oceans also dried up. So they only have about 35% water in their bodies. And for that reason, it's easier for them. They need to jump into a place that's as close to theirs as possible, which is also why they came into Roswell in New Mexico, which was where the Trinity launch was. The first atomic bomb was also launched in New Mexico, because that's where it matched up with their skewed technological timeline.
What is difference between normal alien and gray alien? I noticed that you're talking about gray alien a lot. What is the
Yes.
difference?
Um, yes, and here comes the second heady part of the dimensional experience, because there's not only a ladder that goes upwards, but there's also a ladder sideways. And they call this chiral dimensions. So these are actually dimensions that are similar to ours in vibration, but are following different timelines. And so when they meet up close, they can sometimes overlap. And sometimes you'll actually get a feeling, like for instance ghosts and stuff, like people who have sort of worn patterns in the house that you live in, or in the street where they always worked or something, because people are kind of patterns in time. And so there are actually patterns that are right close to ours, both in time and space. And one of them are alternate human timelines where the gray aliens, which are humans which followed a different path, they exist.
Oh, great. I think this knowledge we cannot even get in the books or online, which you're carrying in your mind.
Yes, I'm trying to get it out there, and I'm actually happy you say that, because I'm the next project is to gather this up in a book, because I feel there's been so much
Right.
information that it's
I was about to tell you, please write some books for generations. Please write some books because store your knowledge in some books, right? And so that other generations can read.
yes. Thank you for saying that, because my educational background is also in literature. But then I discovered this spoken word, like this type of inspired poetry or channeling, or prophetic arts, which I think is so been so exciting to explain. The trouble is just that a lot of the information is really hard to
I
process,
know.
so it helps having it on paper, right? I find that myself, that when I read it I fully understand it, and before that it's still a little, it's just there somehow.
Or else we'll make a movie on your knowledge. I
Yes.
play a role, some role.
I hope like if they yes if there are options, but I, I,
Nowadays, nowadays it's not difficult. Nowadays we have our own empire. We have YouTube channel. We don't need any third party to present ourselves. We have nowadays things are so simple than before. You know, you don't need a producer, or you can be everything by yourself. You know.
that it is so. I'm very glad you say that, but I think that's also a part of, I was talking about like this superhero humanity, but we're all sort of discovering this thing that we can actually live our lives in different ways. And I know, of course, you also right now you live in a place that's far away from where you were brought up, and just that fact that that's possible, right? That human beings go around the planet and sort of live lives that are suited for them, and not just the ones they were born into, that's fascinating, because that wasn't the case for my grandparents, for instance. They were also just living the lives they had to live, for better or worse.
Now migration is for me nowadays migration is like it's a big thing, I know, but it's a small terminology, because the day I came to know that we may be reincarnated on other planets, now it's beyond that. We may have migrated from other planets to this earth and taken birth. So now nowadays I'm getting broader picture of everything, you know.
It and that's beautiful. But I think there's also, speaking of soul contracts, this guidance where we are led to be in certain places at certain times. And I've also been in many places, but what they often explain is that we are also in many ways frequency keepers. So just the fact that your physical self, and you have a very bright energy, so that's located somewhere, is sort of focusing and funneling that there. But I know, of course, Toronto is a big city. Um, it's so. How are you? Do you like living in the big city life? It can be a little much for me, I
Now
think. In
nowadays I'm done. Nowadays I'm planning maybe later in my life I can stay in nature, all green, like a kind of in a small countryside. And because I lived in all big cities, metro lives, I have seen that. Now because the day I came to know that by meditation, spirituality, you can see broader picture of life. Now I'm done with the downtowns, mall, shopping. I want to do research which I cannot see physically. So, yeah, now I want to live a very simple, less crowdy, in nature life.
it's it's interesting where we're carried to in that, because I began having these channeling experiences. I lived in this old brick house which was falling apart, and um but that was somehow magically found, and that was out in the woods, and there was a cat and everything, so that was really like a very helpful space to be in. But cities are also magical spaces, and some people, really, really work well with city environments. But I'm kind of from the countryside myself, so it's always so confusing with lots of people and impressions and billboards and stuff. But cities can of course also be magical.
Let's see where the life is taking. I'm just following my route. My next question is, Mass, what do you think, who is God? What is your definition of God?
Yes,
Oh,
it's I like the generate order destroy acronym in English, and which is of course also the Indian Trinity, Brahminical Trinity. But to me, I think God is the essence be all things, and that essence is also the essence of love, because that's the universal energy. So God is the ineffable reality beyond all reality, and then that emanates, and if we approach it, it is this. It's somehow divided in the three, the sacred holy family, and that's the creator, that's the sustainer. So it's the father, the mother, and the destroyer, the fulfillment, the child. and that's the eon. The 5D we're in right now is also, it's the eon of the child. So again, speaking of, and I've been sort of commenting on this, but we were speaking of Elon Musk. He very much has that energy, of sort of somebody who really enjoys being a billionaire and famous and playing around, and let's go to the moon and let's build some cars, and that and that's like very much that Horus energy of the child. So that's being honored by the energies, and we're always manifesting within those patterns. So you'll see that sort of the energy of the stern father, which we've been living through, is kind of receding, and then we're getting into these more chaotic realities where we everything is a bit volatile, but we can also really play around with what we create.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Also, I was watching your videos and you were talking most of the time you're talking about blue lights. Blue
Yes.
light. What is that? What is this color blue? Yeah.
Yes.
Is it sky blue, navy blue, dark
uh,
blue?
I'll say it's star blue. I remember only seeing it a few times, which is from shooting stars. This is very particular blue color, and that's of course very little light that's not artificial comes from other light sources than the sun. But there is that starlight, and I connected very much with the Pleiadian light. Um, but it's in many ways the color of our soul. I feel like the same reason we're drawn to like these, lagoon and Asia, like completely pure crystalline waters. It's because it's somehow that healing color that our soul longs to be in.
Hmm. Have you ever experienced or seen angels?
Uh, yeah, yes. Well,
How
it
do they look like? Are they white, white? They wear the white clothes or, you know,
yes,
like that?
it kind of actually depends on the order, because and archangels often look human. But the ancient descriptions of the seraphim, if you look up the gates of Babylon, they are actually the tetramorph. So it's the combination of the face of a man, the body of a lion, the tail of an ox, and the wings of an eagle. And some of them, like the innermost, the divine keepers of knowledge, they look more like rotating wheels of fire, or is
Mm,
yes, sort of angelic voices, like these strange composite
mm.
shapes of divine energy. It's quite beautiful.
Do they have big feathers and
I think no, not in that sense. I wouldn't really say it. And of course, when I see it, I see them. It's more like I either see them as outlines across my vision, or
oh,
with my inner eye. So I haven't seen like a human being with wings. Um, but I think when angels turn up in that form, they often look like people. You won't necessarily be able to see their wings, but they'll just be somebody who's somehow there to push you out of the way when you would otherwise get run over, or some things people describe where there was a person there to help them, and then they were nowhere to be found. I think that's often how they appear when they show up in that way.
and what is their language of talking to us? Do they talk
Uh,
like we are talking or is it some other language? Yeah.
yes, they speak, in perhaps more in song, actually, to also go back to the beginning. They speak in these long high frequencies. And so you'll find it very much in different hymns, mantras. These traditions of invocation and song is very angelic. And there is, for instance, one of my favorite images. I believe it was one of the Byzantine monasteries where they were always singing the Trisagion. So there was a shift, and that's the three times the thrice holy, holy, holy. So it like that idea that to keep the world circulating, somebody always needs to be singing the praise of the center, the very foundation of it, the Godhead. And I think that's what the angels actually do. The innermost angels, they sort of rotate and keep up the divine order. Um,
So you have experienced all those things in the meditation, during the meditation.
yes, yes.
How do
Um,
you how do you feel about that? What is your experience?
I think the downside of it is, of course, that like this world pales in comparison to that world, and so I feel a lot of homesickness in a deep sense that's perhaps very typical for spiritual people, right? That sense that you want to transcend back into the eternal realms. Um, but of course, then I also feel blessed and grateful and humbled and in service to that light. And I of course also know I don't get to decide where I'm at. So I have to stay on my I also have to stay on my path, and so I can come home to the light in due time.
Last question. One last
Yes,
question. Okay. So I have watched your videos. You're talking about arcu arcutarian, I think.
yes.
Is that right?
Arcturians, yes.
Arcturians, yeah. Who are those?
Thank you for asking. Arcturus is a star which is located, I believe, 444 light years away, and
It's a galaxy, you mean?
no, a star. So it's in the Milky Way galaxy. Um, and so yes, our Milky Way galaxy is has about 200 billion stars, I believe it is, and most of those entities that we talk with belong to the Milky Way galaxy. We can get communications, but this is kind of our realm, and the Arcturians are a part of this, what they call the seed race lineage. So the idea that living beings on different planets are somehow slightly altered in their genetic code in order to contain and explore some of these imprints. And so they live beyond time. So that's also why they have billions of years to try to play around with organic life. And that's because they really like to have um, let's say, somebody to talk to up there. So they're hoping to develop from humanity and from other beings, other nine-dimensional collectives, other sort of angelic awarenesses. But the Arcturians themselves now they are not in the physical anymore. They stopped being in the physical about 2.3 billion years ago. So you can still you can or I can people who want to connect to them can connect to their Akashic record. So I can
Mm.
read all of their history, memories, and things. And of course, I have to try to figure it out because I need to translate it so I can see it. But I can actually do that.
I didn't
Um,
know we can even do Akashic record for a different world. Big thing.
yes,
My God.
exactly. Because it's
Very,
all connected. It's all one big overmind, like mental internet.
yeah.
And
Thank you
the
so much. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. Yes.
you're very welcome. And the Arcturians are, because then we have different themes, but the Arcturians are what are mainly connected to religion, wisdom, art, these themes. So whether
Mm.
human beings, for instance, are kind of the lovers, they correspond to somebody like Freya or Aphrodite. Um, then the Arcturians are more like they correspond to Apollo and Hermes, like of Ganesha, so like these high and like these energies of knowledge and insight and wisdom. So that's why many people who are interested in those things also have a lot of Arcturian energy in it, and I can tell that you have a good deal of it yourself, for instance. So it makes sense that you're drawn to it, that those are also the ones you ask about.
Great. I think in today's podcast, because of the time limits, we are able to talk this much only. But I see, Mass, you are carrying great knowledge, really. So I think I would have to call you again for the podcast
Yes,
some other time, you
I
know. And
I'd
thank you
love
so
that. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much for giving your knowledge to all the viewers and Soul family. They really need this knowledge. What is a message you would like to give to our Soul family?
Yes, thank you. To you personally, Amba, I'd like to thank you for also being the grounding principle for these etheric energies, because it's so helpful to have it in this format and presented in this way. And the message to everybody is, of course, that you'd be amazed in what you yourself have access to and can unlock and remember. And also always remember that that starts in your intuition, your guidance, your feeling of resonance, because everything is connected. And if one thing is true, then everything can be true and be brought into alignment with your heart center. I'll, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much for this beautiful message, Mass. Uh, Again, I would like to say a big thank you to you for sharing your knowledge and your experience to the viewers and Soul family. Have a great one.
Thank you. You too. You're welcome. And thank you too.